So Seth, you could sit here, right? He could just sit there and then I'll show you the thing. Or do you want me to sit on the other side? Angie?
Oh, I'm
Do you want me to have another chair or just start with him sitting there?
You're gonna swap off,
Yeah.
right? Then why don't we leave it this
Okay.
way and you guys can swap off?
It's two
We'll
different.
stop.
It's the same interview.
Yeah.
I just have two questions.
Professor Markle, tenured professor, Black Panther book writer,
Yeah.
humblest person,
Listen.
revolutionary,
It's
somehow makes
that's why
it
you bring other
through
people around
all the traps of white
That's right.
supremacy.
Let them give you the intro.
It's
How you my
amazing.
hype man?
I
This
just
is
want
like
you to
you
know,
being
like,
necessary.
it's not a regular dude asking
It's
these
very
questions.
necessary. I know how to recognize.
Good.
special people.
comfortable with that? Do you want feet and everything?
That's great.
Let me move
Yeah,
this
you
up.
could chop it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As long as it's well focused. And I think it's on.
So the course is living hip hop, and again,
I'm
it's
changing
about,
to ring. I can't.
It's not a music. It's not what's marketed to us. We're getting back to connecting with people who actually live hip hop.
It's on
To educate the
autofocus
next
and it's grabbing
generation,
faces,
because they're
so
being
it'll
taught
be
by
fine.
people that don't have our best interests.
So basically, in our first two modules, meaning the first 2 weeks of the class, we're doing origins of hip hop. So we talked to Audio Doom of the Last Poets. We talked to Harry Allen yesterday. And the way that we're setting it up is looking at the origins of hip hop.
No, I'm comfortable with the audio. I want to get
Black arts movement and how that would kind of set the stage and allow
Okay.
for hip hop. But then also the repression against it, you know, opening up this space for hip hop too, right? And so as are you guys recording? Because I'm just riffing right now. I was giving y'all some background. Okay. But the whole idea is for these my 2 questions. One is going to be about as hip hop artists, to what extent are you knowledgeable of that past, and how is that past important for you as artists to understanding that history, right, before hip hop and what was happening in the 60s. And then the second week, we're really talking about sort of like you young people moving into gangs, of course, you know, you can't really talk about hip hop without talking about the street gangs that emerge too. So my questions is kind of like artists of contemporary era, how important is historical knowledge?
Right.
Right.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So we're here with the ReMinders here at the 14th International Hip Hop Festival, Hartford, Connecticut. You guys just finished the panel listening about Muslim Islam's impact on history of hip hop, music, and culture. But you're also talking about it on your personal lives. You know, it was a really kind of personal panel where you're really addressing being Muslim and being all these other things too, and how that kind of intersectionality, kind of leads to not a one category or one way you can talk about someone being Muslim, right? But you did talk about, in the parts that I was attending and listening to, right off the bat was Kumo D, right? So that's to some people that's old school, right? Not necessarily to us, but that's still somebody. And I'm a historian by training, so I'm always interested in the history question. So I have 2 questions for you guys today, and that is one: as artists of the contemporary era, we see hip hop, at least in this class living hip hop, we see the origins of hip hop coming from the 60s, the Black Power movement, as well as the Black Arts movement that was connected to the Black Power movement. And that was at least one of those sort of antecedents, right, to the movement. Can you talk about how important it is, or how you got knowledge of the past? How important was history to you as artists, and specifically how important was that moment in time, in terms of the way you think about the way you do your art, and think about the way that you honor what's taking place before us.
Right. One word I've heard at least 3 times today is historian. And I'm starting to slowly view us as historians on top of being artists, because when we speak, when we have panels and different discussions, we love to give certain markers. Okay, well, this came, but before this was this. You know what I mean? Growing up, I grew up in Europe. I grew up in Belgium, and it wasn't necessarily an East Coast, West Coast, down south. We just took it all in. It was just hip hop in general, you know. And from there, you see, oh, this person's doing a song with that person because they're from this side. And then you start to dig deeper you dig, especially with hip hop, it's music that was made from sampling older records. And I love finding old samples. Like I'll tell Asia all the time, you know what that's from? Like, oh, you dig it up. You know what I mean? Like it makes you appreciate the music better. You know what I mean? When you understand, like, this is why this exists. You know what I mean? And I think we try to do that with our children a lot. Like, okay, you like this, but this came from that. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah, sure.
I think for me, the family that I came up in, the roots of things were far more important than their contemporary existence. And where I lived, it was more like, you hear how they're doing this drum pattern, this comes from this African drum, that came from this, that came from that. So it always, I never separated hip hop into being a contemporary movement. It was just a continuation of a movement that came before. In terms of even talking about poetry and poets, you have to remember at the time too, that there's a separation in the community of poets as to whether you had a social responsibility to talk about issues that affected Black people, and you have like Last Poets and people like that there. And then on the other side, you have Gwendolyn Brooks, who says, I should be able to talk about whatever I want because poetry is self-expression, right? And that divide kind of continues. So a lot of the time, we forget that there's people on the other side of the argument of the purpose of the art and the responsibility and the intention. But when I was growing up, my father and mother and my uncles and my aunts and my grandmother made it an integral part of the formation of knowledge for me to know that there are two sides of this argument and which side we all want. You know?
Yeah, right. If we're talking about historical knowledge, I was talking to Harry Allen the other day, and he was really asking me about my life story. And you know, you don't really know what you're going to say, but in some ways, when I was listening to hip hop as a kid, and I was learning about hearing names like Malcolm X, Nat Turner, right, just based on the music we're listening to, and being like, I don't really know who these people are. School wasn't the outlet for me to gain knowledge, and so there had to be a certain amount of self-agency. And I went to the library and I picked up Malcolm X's autobiography. I took out Dick Gregory's Nigger. I took out, maybe an anthology of Black poetry coming from the 60s. So I had to do these things in order to build my own sense, or to get a grasp of my own history.
Right.
Can you talk about your efforts in terms of like this idea of digging, or this idea of gaining knowledge or acquiring knowledge outside of standard institutions that might not provide what we're looking for?
It's the same path. Matter of fact, Dick Gregory's Nigger is the first book I ever read in English.
Wow.
I grew up speaking French, and that was the first book I ever picked up.
Wow.
But it's the same thing. You hear certain things in the music or out in the streets that you're like, okay, you know what? I gravitate towards this, and I want to learn more about it. And I'm not gonna learn it in school. I'm not even gonna learn it at home. To tell you the truth, half the time, because you're so caught up in the hustle and bustle that you don't have that time. So it's really upon yourself. And go ahead, you can tell your
So in where I'm from, there's a network of communication, right? So knowledge is always being put on you, even from like my grandmother telling me certain things and the way we do things and what we don't do. Like there's always some kind of knowledge, but it always had a history. Like the reason this is like this is because of this. So when you mentioned Kuma D, when I was younger, I thought I could be Kuma D. I didn't see any gender, I just saw the way that he looked and the way that he moved and the way that he sounded, and I was like, yo, I want to be Kuma D. I wanted to be Full Force at one time. I really like the thing tied right here. You know what I mean? Like I was imitating a lot, and that created room for my parents to say, okay, this is this. And what was so fascinating to my dad goes, all the dope boys want to be rappers because it doesn't have the risk, right? But you can still show up in a gold chain driving this because they just are all signing rap contracts. You know what I mean? So it's just like when basketball became that new thing. Now the basketball players are coming out with gold chains and nice cars. So the history of it was always accumulating knowledge for me was always a result of living, right? There's just like you were talking about. My grandfather said something to me that is one of the most profound things I ever heard, because I came, I'm coming up in the 80s and 90s when we're doing the continuation of like knowledge of self, 5%ers, Black Power movement. And my grandfather one time, when everybody started wearing big Malcolm X pins and big X hats and Spike Lee, had Malcolm X, my grandfather goes, this is hilarious to me, because when Malcolm X was around, nobody was admitting their affiliation with him for fear of retribution, right? And what happens in our communities is we always embrace our heroes so late, right? And we always reject them when they're trying to save us, but we immortalize them after they're dead, trying to save us, you know? And my grandfather's like, so it's funny to me to see people with these big Malcolm X pins when I was going to these conversations, even if he just gave a lecture, I have to explain myself in great detail, and I have to face rejection, and I have to, all of a sudden I'm a communist, and I'm this, and I'm that. My grandfather's like, the stigma that comes with acquiring knowledge is usually not one that people find acceptable. So like the path you have to go through, like if you're from the hood and you go to college, everybody call you college boy. Right? The path you take to acquiring knowledge is a thorny one. You know? But you have to pursue it anyway, and that's why the acquisition of knowledge and art to me go hand in hand, because art involves a tremendous amount of self-exposure and risk, and so does the pursuit of knowledge. Right? Both things. Like tremendous amount of, I know I could fail, I know people could ridicule me, I know that I could not be the best of it, it's humbling, it's going to make me feel like I don't know anything. Art and the pursuit of any other kind of knowledge have that in common, you know, which is why your art revolves around your pursuit of knowledge.
That was perfect. Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
See, I couldn't have asked
That's a little smart.
Oh,
Second module of the year.
second module.
Yeah, he's
that was a warm-up.
Yeah, we got a system going
Oh,
on.
I see. A bag?
Yeah, she needs a net. This is the bag of the suitcase too.
Ready?
So I'm good, right?
Can we do a countdown, Sean?
All right, lovebirds. Jeez, I'm here with the reminders. This big Samir, Asia.
Yeah.
We got a few things to talk about. Like y'all can basically cover every module of this course, but mainly we're gonna ask you about the MCing component. Not because I'm an MC. It's not an ego thing. It's just I think y'all represent. You know what I mean? Y'all some of my favorite MCs, right? So obviously it's an honor. If you're gonna ask people about it, pick some of the best ones. So thank you for being here
Thank you for
at the
having us.
International Hip Hop Festival. Thank you for representing. One thing that I noticed when I'm trying to explain the difference between rapping and MCing, a lot of times we're used to a certain type of capitalism, a certain type of white supremacy that is in our environment. It makes things dualistic all the time. It's always polarized. It's this or that. And I like to point out that one, hip hop is not sex, drugs, violence, and money. It's peace, love, unity, and fun. But more importantly, sex, drugs, violence, and money are not the opposites of this. Those are strategies for people to try to achieve peace, love, unity, and fun when they can't get them, right? MCing isn't like the opposed to rapping, right? But it's something that uses rapping as a means to accomplish it, right? I think one of the easiest ways to explain it is that I say a rapper can lyrically say all these lyrical things, but an MC, if a concert's happening and a fight breaks out, we're gonna either stop and jump off the stage and do something, or we're gonna start changing our raps to change how people are allowing or not allowing that to happen. We feel responsible. So it's almost like you're being a parent.
Absolutely.
And y'all are actually parents. And so many great MCs are parents. Like, I think the secret to a lot of MCs is that they're parents. They're either a big brother, a big sister who's taking care of kids in their family, or they're a parent, or they're looking out for kids in their community. That's what most of us do. Before we get in it, we're in after-school programs, social organizations like that, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if you're ready for us to talk about.
Definitely.
A lot of my favorite artists, I grew up in a single mother home, so a lot of my favorite artists were father figures to me. You know what I mean? Or like people I could relate to and that I'm getting the message from. They're teaching me stuff. Now, what makes a great artist or a great MC is when they recognize that they have to be held responsible, or when they recognize the power they have when they have that microphone in front of them.
Okay.
Because some artists, when they start out, we all start out, the rhymes you used to write before are not like the ones you write now. You know what I mean? We all,
Sedan, Superman.
you know what I mean? Like we all grow in our artistry.
We grow.
We start out we're babies in this thing, and we're young adults, and then eventually we become the great artists that we're meant to be. Now, with that being said, some of our favorite artists whose messages we may not even, some big artists whose message we may not even necessarily agree with, their hip hop may not be our hip hop because that's what they see around, from sex, drugs, money, etc. That's all they know. They love hip hop. They're like, well, it's my turn, but this is all I see.
Right.
Like the
That's
people in my house,
their
this
way
is, you know,
to reach
like
that
the building next door to me is abandoned, and there's a crackhead in there.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I'm reflecting that. Even if we talk about the message, you know, Melly Mel and I'm like, that's what they were talking about as well. You know what I mean? It's just learning how to do it in a creative way, in a responsible way, and not just be reckless when you have children listening and following you. You know what I mean? Because you have some artists who just put out crazy messages out there without a care. You know, like you have those
So
children.
let me interject. So you're saying, as with parenting, but you're saying as with an MC, a master of ceremony versus just someone who's rapping, that there's two things really. You gotta know people are looking up to your artistry, right?
Sure.
That's hip hop. There's
Sure.
a competitive energy. There's and we'll talk about that in a second. But there's definitely a competitive energy where if you're whack, it doesn't matter what you're saying.
Yeah.
So first of all, I'm looking up to you because I'm looking for role models as a young person in my community who wants to see who people are looking at, what I need to, because that's how trees grow, that's how anything grows. You want to see what's leading the way.
Yeah.
And adjacent to that is also a feeling of responsibility for how, because great power is responsibility. If you can rap really well, you know, have y'all ever had the experience of people getting riled up behind you and getting hurt or getting involved in something that they weren't necessarily ready for, whether they weren't exactly aware of the movement enough or aware of the consequences of standing up for something? And I say that because I definitely have, and that's part of how I learned responsibility. Like, I need to be careful when I'm around people up.
No, for sure. I mean, there's a follow through. There's a follow through with the things that you say, you know, on records that you say when you're on that stage. Like you can't just throw it out there and then people get riled up and it's like, now what we do? You know what I mean? So that's where the responsible piece come in. But just like you said, if you're whack, you're not gonna last on that stage. When it comes down to that,
You don't have that problem. If you're back, you don't have that problem.
Yeah.
My perspective is actually different.
Okay.
And the way that I was brought up is that perspective is incredibly important. And if you look at perspective, you understand things way better.
Okay.
Right? So when we talk about, like for me, like when Samir says you can't get up on the stage and be whack, you can. Yeah, you can. You can get on the stage and be whack. People are doing it every day.
So let's more.
I'm gonna give you an example. Somebody could say, I only been, there's rappers out now that say, I only been rapping for 6 months. Cardi B herself said, I don't care about hip hop music. She's on the biggest stages in the world, right? Whether or not
So
you
you're
agree with
speaking
her,
of confidence.
I'm saying, you're saying, people
Self-esteem.
in this hip hop mentality says you can't get on stage and be whack, but you can.
No.
Because,
There's two things.
hold on, I'm just talking about perspective. I'm about to segue into something else, right? You can get on stage and be whack because that's a matter of perspective, right? So hip hop is an art form, right? And so you cannot contain art because art is an expression of freedom. So the more you push somebody, the more they're gonna push back, right? The more our parents said, you can't take these records and sample them because this is really such and such song, the more we were like, ticka, 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 boom, this is ours, right? And so with hip hop, peace, love, unity, and having fun, I started to think to myself, to me, peace, love, unity, and having fun is this, and this. Somebody could be like, yo, peace to me is me riding with my homies after we just got done murking somebody because ain't nothing about to come back to us. Love to me is I love hoes, right? Unity is my games, how we be crippin', how we be doing this. You know what I mean? Having fun is like, we like to go get drunk, we like to, so it's
These are strategies to reach
yeah, it's perspective, right? Because they're saying it is peace, love, unity, and having fun.
And it is.
But the
It
way we
actually
do it
is.
is different than you do it. And my perspective is we have to be careful in how we regard and disregard people. Because no matter how conscious our rap lyrics are, when people see us, they see them. You understand? When you come around and you look like you look, they see these people that are talking about those other things. They don't see your lyrical ability. It's only by you expressing it that it's obvious. But what people see when you say, I rhyme, they see whatever the contemporary image of being a rapper is right now. You know, so he probably smokes weed and does drugs. He probably got multiple girls. Like, you cannot control the image, right? You cannot control what the zeitgeist of hip-hop is at the time. So what we can control is as MCs. I was so hyped when Kendrick Lamar's record came out, Good Kid, Mad City, because I heard his underground tapes. But I love stories. Like, I love storytelling. And I'm like, yo, this is one of the best records I've heard in so long. And then this teenager goes, there's too many words. You can't catch a vibe. You know what I mean? And I'm like, to him it's whack. Like, to him, like, you can't even catch a vibe. But Travis Scott, now that, you can catch a vibe. Like, his passion for it and the way he's arguing with me is the same way that when I'm trying to tell my mom Lost Boys are just as good as LL Cool J. And when I'm trying to tell my mom, I think Black Star is just as good as Run DMC. Huh?
Who is this young person?
This is one of the youth that we're talking to, because we do a lot of
But he was
stuff.
comparing Kendrick to someone else?
He was saying
Or he was just saying
Kendrick is very wordy. That's what he's saying. For his attention span, now be mindful. These kids' attention span is different from ours. Like, even my kids, if they have their phone and I'm talking to them, it's like, and I'm back to it. Like, their attention span is shorter. So.
And your kids are educated, brilliant,
Yeah.
creative, beautiful, handsome, powerful. Y'all gonna give us jobs soon, right?
Same as yours, but this is what my kids are growing up. This is the dominant culture, so I have to be sure I understand it. And I have to be sure.
Well, let me say something, not even to go to the next point. Let me say something to bring it full circle, actually back to what we were saying.
Yeah.
Whack is perspective.
Right.
But confidence, grabbing attention. See, Harry Allen yesterday, when we were talking about Public Enemy, they said their concept was we need to have the type of volume, metaphorically and physically, where a crackhead is going to look up. And I said, to your point, in these days, that would be someone on a cell phone.
Right.
Right? So it's the same thing. But whether you like my concept or we have different strategies to achieve these principles, our human needs of peace, love, and unity, isn't it still, without talking about black, isn't there a level of the person themselves cannot think their way? This isn't, when you're emceeing, you don't get up on a mic and rock in front of a large group of people, much less a cipher like how a lot of us start out in the street.
Right.
You don't get in that environment and go, well, I might be whack or not. You can't.
Yeah, you're not.
And I know y'all, I've seen footage of y'all like since I first met y'all. I know you know about that.
But we come from a generation where you had to make your own cool. Like, you had to really be cool.
Yes.
But this generation, people decide for you whether you're cool or not. You see what I'm saying? You can put up, like, for us, it's like, okay, I've been waiting for weeks. Everybody's drumming on the lunch table. This is the day that I'm going to step in and I'm going to do what I do. So what happened is playing, like play for kids is such an integral part of development. Because you have to want to be a part of something and prepare yourself and then get into the ring. Right? Right now, they don't have to do that. It's like there's a big ring and everyone can just jump in. Right? It's like my kids, like the fact that I played outside.
In terms of the cadences, in terms of
everything.
the access.
And everything. So it's like, if say you play basketball, right? And you're a little kid and you play basketball and you just do videos of you shooting and making threes that are edited and you make them all the time. And then Duke's like, we want you on our team. You never have to play a game. You never have to do,
It's
you know, so with
rapping,
rapping, it's like, you could get on there and just rap one time. And then boom, we want you, like, you're the superstar now. It's not, and I think what happens is that's why these artists can't last. Because
are these MCs in the sense that we're talking? Are they rappers? Are
they're people who they're doing something because
they're definitely rapping.
And that's what's popular.
Yes.
But like I said, for me, I'm a person where word choice is very important for me. That's why I'm an MC, because rapping is taking a marker and being like, here's a person, and drawing a smiley face. It's representative of a person, but MCing is drawing a detailed detailed picture of a person's face, and you know exactly what they look like and what color they are and what color their eyes are, and the emotion behind their facial expression, that's emceeing. Rapping is saying, here's a man, right? Look, here's a man. That's rapping. There was a man. You know, he had a family, right?
Yeah.
That's rapping. Emceeing is saying, 3 kids deep in the middle of the street, right? No money in my pockets, no shoes on my feet.
Okay.
That's emceeing,
Okay.
right? Here's a man with children, here's a situation, here's where he's at, here's the emotions he's probably feeling in the same amount of time.
Okay.
In the same amount of time that you have,
So
I
I
could
think
paint
you're
a much
doing,
better picture.
and I think you're actually adding a feminine or a womanist needed nourishment too, because you're actually saying that a lot of people are rappers and you love them, but they're not MCs.
No,
But
no,
you're saying that in a
because you
loving
can
way.
draw, but
That's what I'm hearing.
you can't
Am I
draw.
wrong?
Like if I say,
Because you're saying they can get on these things, but you're saying they're not gonna last that long.
Right.
But we'll give them another chance.
here's what I'm saying is if you say that you draw a picture of a smiley face, I'm just gonna ask you, and I'm looking off camera, I don't know if that's allowed. I'm gonna ask y'all. I draw a picture of a smiley face and I say this is a man. Right? Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Right? If I say this is a man, it's representative of a man. Right? But if I give you a detailed drawing of somebody with a stern, angular face, and you have a man, and it ignites curiosity about the man's story. Nobody gets curious about a smiley face. Right? So when you are emceeing, you are creating an entire world.
Okay.
Right? It's like I could say I write books, and I could be like Jack kissed, Jane.
Right.
They fell in love. The end. It's like, okay, it is a story, right? Or I could write a novel. I could create a world for you to come inside, like to live inside, right? And to me, that's emceeing. Rapping is saying, hey, here's this thing over here, like very detached. You know what I mean? Very.
So there's a
emceeing is zooming in.
responsibility to the cipher.
I think it has to do with being prepared and really working on your craft. If you're drawing a smiley face, that may be the best you can do,
Okay.
right? But you got somebody who's been practicing their craft for a lot longer than you, that's going to do more than just to circle 2 dots and another little swivel.
Yeah, and emceeing involves intellect, right? It involves the use of metaphor, it involves the use of simile, it involves the use of
Not
personification.
just rhyme.
It involves lyrical devices that are devices for colorful language.
Yes.
You see what I'm
Going
saying? So
beyond.
it's like instead of you saying, emceeing is this. Me saying, and I always use this example because it's my favorite one. I say, you came into my life and you tore my world apart. You made me cry and you broke my
Heart.
right? That's rapping, right? Emceeing is this. You came into my life and you tore my world apart. You made me cry and you broke my life into a million pieces falling on the street. Now I'm crying broken tears every time that I meet with that's that. Now you're interested, you engage, right? Because I knew that if I said the word heart there, you would lose interest.
So
Right? So I want you to pay attention to this specific part. MCs use lyrical devices intentionally. Right? Rappers are more concerned with just getting it out.
So I'm thinking of words like sustainability, continuation, cipher. Do you think sustainability is related to what we're talking about? In terms of being a higher degree of practicing and living hip hop versus just rapping or a paintbrush or making a beat?
Yeah, because you see there's levels of it, right? Like, so you look at somebody like Kendrick and J. Cole, right? And then they come from camps of people, right? But people decide who's the best out of your camp by their lyrical ability,
Okay.
right? It's not like people are like, I just love him better because his party lyrics are the best. It's like, no, when I listen to this, I can visualize something happening and that's entertaining for me, right? People say, yeah, well, he's not like if you say if you talk about Kendrick, and then you're like, and then there's also like Lil Boo Boo, or wherever they're, I don't even know, that might be somebody real, but I'm just making it up, right? If you say there's Lil Boo Boo, and I'm like, yeah, but Lil
Shout out Lil Boo Boo.
but I'm like, Lil Boo Boo is not like Kendrick,
And
they're
Lil
like,
Boo Boo Killer.
they're like, yeah, but it's different, right? To them, it's not the same. Like, of course you can't compare Kendrick and Lil Boo Boo,
Right.
you know what I mean? Because they recognize that there is an ability that's necessary and that involves development. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and what happens with a developed MC is that his music or his presence or whatever he does is going to be timeless.
Timeless.
KRS-One can come out here and do a song he wrote and produced in '89, and the crowd's going to go crazy.
Right.
as an MC still living that. Or the difference also is, okay, I know my homie who raps, right? So I'm gonna have a party and I'm gonna have him host it. Cool, he'll probably do his job, he'll probably get through. But then you'll have MC Supernatural come and host the party, and that's gonna be completely different
Right.
because he's an
The
MC.
freestyle.
Because he's an
Freestyle.
MC, and he's gonna make it
It's
entertaining.
like training.
And he's gonna make it what it is, and that's what I meant by you can't just get on the stage because not everybody can get the crowd's attention. I know a million rappers.
So you know,
I
you
know.
can't just get on
You
the
can't just
stage,
get on
but
the
people
stage.
can just put you on the stage. That's the
You
difference.
can get up on the stage. Anybody can get up on the stage, even if you're not. Anybody here can get up.
We
Hi,
get
how you
charged
doing?
up.
La, la, la. But if you're an MC,
And just think about it.
Because we love this is what we love.
listen. If you're an MC, you're
Make sure you
stage.
call us.
No, Boo needs a feature, Andy.
Listen, when something jumps off, like we've been on stages where there's a big fight. Like I was just at a concert the other day, and there was a fight, and the artist didn't know what to do.
Right.
What?
The
He's
artist
like,
said, hey, like I'm still here. Like pay attention to me. Hey, don't pay attention to the cat fight. That's what he kept saying. Don't pay attention to the cat fight. No, it's you're more responsible than that.
But
you know
when
what
you
I mean?
watch
But
the
you're not
crowd-
prepared as an MC.
That's
You're
the
not
thing.
prepared as
You're
an
not
MC.
prepared because you didn't go through the training. That's what I was talking about with the play. Like you gotta be, if you wanted to be in the basketball game, you would dribble that basketball. When I was younger, my brother, I was like, can I play that? No, you whack. I'll be up and down the
You
street.
gotta go until you
Let
ready.
me, like, and then the next day, can I play? No, you have to, as a person who's an artist, you have to deal with rejection,
But
a
look,
tremendous amount to create desire.
but next time if you show up on a basketball court and you just hitting them J's from everywhere, then you'll be like,
And
okay,
that's the
I'll pay.
confidence
I'll pay.
point. That's the confidence
That's the
point because you get to a point when you're an MC where you're like, put me out there.
Mhm.
Right? When you're just a rapper, it's like
Let me
I
ask you a
remember
question
before.
about that. Go ahead.
I remember before I got into like straight MCing, and I was just, you're just making up stuff.
Okay.
And I remember this feeling I used to get when people would be like, "It's time for the freestyle." I'm like, I gotta get out of here because I'm going
That
to look
energy.
whack. I'm going to compromise myself because
Yeah.
I'm not prepared.
Right.
Right? MCing now to me, the confidence you talked about,
Yeah.
is because I have no regard for people's opinion because I know I'm dumb.
Right.
I don't doubt it. There's not if you were like, she's whack, it does nothing to me. Like it's, and the
So-
confidence you talk about MCs come
Yes.
ready,
Yes.
right? We ready.
Yes.
Like please,
Are
please somebody.
MCs ready for, and by way of MCs, I think what we're talking about right now, like we're saying basketball, a few different metaphors, we're talking about a few different aspects of the culture, right? This applies to B-girls, this applies to writers, but when MCs come ready, are they ready for the timelessness, or are they just ready because they practice? From what we're saying right now, it could be either and it could be both, right? But when I think of KRS, I'm not even going to say I suppose or I assume because I'm not like outside of culture. I'm in this culture and I know and I spoke to it. So I know he was like, I'm writing this to be timeless.
Hey,
But to your point from earlier, that could be causality or correlation. Is a dope MC, is a great master of the ceremony, is that part of it, that they are on purpose? Like, I have kids, I have a community, this isn't about me? Or is it just because we're showing up so much that they're...
To me, it's like we talked
Does it
about-
matter? Does that matter?
it's like we talked about with the community of poets, right? Why are you pursuing excellence in your art?
Why?
Right? Why are you pursuing it? So you have some people that could never have any commercial success or get any recognition, but they write every day nonstop because they're compelled to do it.
It's a part of it.
Right? It's a compulsion. And then you have other people that say, I can't stop doing this because I have a social responsibility. Right? So the intention behind it is equally as important as the result. Right? So somebody like me, I'm going to write forever.
Yeah.
Forever. Because I am in pursuit of the perfect way to express myself. Right? I want to be
Whether there's a
understood.
stage or not.
Ooh.
Whether there's a stage or not.
I'm in pursuit of that. It's not about anybody. And if people can resonate with what I'm saying, all the more validating and wonderful. But I am trying to learn how to, learning every word I can. I'm researching as much history and as much knowledge as I can so I can open my mouth one day and actually say what I mean.
Wow.
Actually say what I mean to say.
Wow.
Because it doesn't ever happen right now. You know what I mean? And so my pursuit in music is for me to be able to express myself and self-actualize and see a spark of recognition in your eye.
Yeah.
Now I found a person that's like me. Because I
Someone makes
finally,
that face.
somebody knows me and I
You
know
got
them.
5,000 people in the crowd, but you see that one person.
Connection.
go,
Right, and I said it exactly what I wanted to say,
Yeah.
and somebody recognized me
Right.
inside of all of this, inside of all my human condition.
So really, there's a sense of humility and confidence,
Right.
right? You gotta have the confidence of knowing I'm gonna get hurt, I have the skill, mixed with the humility of knowing the reason I have to be so dope is because even with the English language and the rap language and the stereos and the mic, people often don't really get each other in
yeah.
day-to-day life.
I mean, an artist you're gonna express yourself at your lowest and at your highest. So sometimes it may not be pretty.
Right.
Sometimes it may be, you may feel good or you may feel terrible, but it's you expressing your
Your
journey.
job is to do that.
Your journey, and that's what's gonna reflect with other people.
So when we look at other people, it's like I'm watching somebody like Meek Mill right now, right?
That you're going through the journey.
Yeah, so
They're
like,
gonna see,
They gonna
even
see
if they don't know your journey, they're like, oh, I'm not the only one going through a show. And that's why sometimes we can relate to someone dancing or playing a saxophone
You
or rapping
see-
in a different language.
you see a spark of recognition in somebody's eyes. We have the devices of melody, we have the devices of rhythm to create an environment
Okay,
in which to tell somebody something,
right.
right? So if I want to tell you bad news, I'm going to take you into a room that's mellow,
Yeah.
and I'm going to say, sit down for a second, because I need to tell you something. Right? If I'm about to tell you some good news, I'm going to be like, I'm going to create an environment for which to tell you what I need to tell you. So as MCs, as musicians, we use our music to create an environment to tell you what we have to tell you, right? So if
Does
you,
that make it problematic for people to have labels like conscious rapper or gangster rapper where you're expected to always be happy or always
people's
be sad?
expectation has nothing to do with your artistry. It has everything to do with your ego. If you need to cater to people's expectation, that's on you. But the artist inside you is like, I don't care, right? So for me,
Do
when you
y'all
say,
use those labels? Do you find them
No.
useful or you find
no,
them
because when people say I'm conscious, then I'm hanging out with Lil Boo Boo because he's my cousin. They're like, oh, I thought you was conscious.
Right, right.
No, like
you betrayed me.
like we
That's
talked
it.
about earlier.
How dare you have that
There's-
as your cousin?
There's always circumstance, right? And that's what leads to me saying, let me write a rap about how I came into knowledge of self, but Lil Boo Boo's still my cousin and I'll ride for Lil Boo Boo any day. Now you understand me and you understand why I'm with Lil Boo Boo and I can still rap about conscious things. I'm creating an environment with which to make you understand who I am. So as an artist, when you talk about confidence and then like not being good enough, to me as artists we have three selves. You have the self that's now, the past self that's like, you killing it,
Right.
because you're better than that past self. Then you have the future self that's like, you're not there yet.
Keep going.
You're not there, right? So you exist in three tenses as an artist. The past me, the me now, and the future me, and I'm consistently in conversation with those people.
So, someone at a high degree practicing hip hop is engaged on that timeline. We know that for sure.
Yeah.
They're not just in this moment. They're more present than anyone probably because this is building up that future.
Any artist you know is three versions of
But
themselves at
they're
one
not
time.
necessarily saying, I'm doing this for the future. There's some who are saying, I'm doing it
It's
for the
just a
future.
path.
And there's some who are like,
I'm
they're
just-
most
I'm doing
likely
it.
going to
I'm
do
doing
it
it.
in the future because they're so consistent.
But you can tell and you can feel that when you see an artist. Like this is. I've seen, man.
Ask them what their future self looks like. Is it
Yeah,
standing over there holding stacks of money, driving a Beamer? Because it's going to say, come this way, towards me. And leave that way that you were on, and come over here.
And we've been doing it long enough to be able to see. Okay, somebody might have seen somebody on the stage is like, I want that. I want that kind of clout they got. I want that kind of reaction. So let me try that.
And they create the future self, like clap.
Or some people want
I just have to say, while we talking about selves,
Yeah.
every time I see Samir, we got either weird piece of jewelry that neither of us ever had before that we haven't, or like you got the black with like the gum.
I was looking at that. I was looking at that.
I'm just, it's so ridiculous, but as rappers, we'll notice that thing and no one's saying.
Right.
So this whole interview, I've been noticing that, and I gotta say, like,
It's crazy because I was
different
looking at
selves.
I was also looking at Seth's little beads he was rocking on his wrist. Like, yeah, you peep these things, man.
Right.
It's a part of it because artist doesn't just go from what you express, but also the way you carry yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
We recognize something in each other. Oh, I see what you're rocking. Okay. Same thing. I see Asia does it all the time. Like, yo, I see your makeup or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, we recognize these different.
In this context, of you saying the way you carry yourself is brilliant because we're talking about different selves. And when you carry, no one carries something right here.
Right.
When you carry something, you're going somewhere, right? So in a sense, when you carry yourself somewhere, I know I got my family out here, whether it's in Colorado or Timbuktu, that's a version of me. And it does help me be the MC that I need to be. And it makes me think about how I'm reflecting myself. Because like you say, however they look at Lil Boo Boo or however they look at me, we're all being looked at the same way. You don't really get that choice.
And
That's not up
you
to
don't
us.
have the, that's what I was trying to say at the beginning. Like, we make distinctions and separations within ourselves, but people looking at us from the outside, we're all just the same. You know what I mean? And so for me, in understanding an identity in MC versus rapper and all of that stuff, if human beings could expand themselves and show every one of themselves, like when we met each other, we opened up our chest and it's like, here's me here, here's me there. You saw all these versions of somebody's self, and then we close our chest. You will understand who somebody is. Like there's gonna be a me doing something that you don't recognize in this character that I have now. But you'll see an evolution. And the problem is, we have to look at people as a consistently evolving thing. Nobody is what they will always be. Even you. Right?
You and me?
If I look at you, because you're a consistent human being. Like you're consistent in your kindness, you're consistent in your love, you're consistent in your friendship, you're consistent in your support. You are an incredibly consistent human being, which is an impressive characteristic.
That means a lot for
Right.
us.
But I know that you are a continuously evolving thing, and if the next time I saw you, you changed, I have to keep in mind that you have the power of evolution. You are going to change. And when you look at people, in Islam there's a saying where they say, be kind, because you never know who is beloved to God, because within the realms of the universe there is no time. So you could be a crackhead today and be an angel tomorrow. Right? And so when you look at people
It's just
as...
part of the story.
Right,
That goes back to what you said about story.
Storytelling.
There's no story if you've already at the end.
No, so you have to, when you look at somebody, you have to know that human ability is infinite, right? And human circumstance is infinite in its variations. You remember those books you would read where you could pick
Choose your
which
own
way it
adventure.
went? Choose your own adventure?
Yeah.
So people are doing that on a consistent basis with every decision they make, right? So it's not okay for us to assume that everybody's always going to be this way forever and to be disappointed when they're not, right? So when I look at these people that are like, you might be 24 years old and it's your first time rapping and somebody gave you $1 million, and I know it's not going to last, but you don't, because your future self is over there like, look at all the stacks of money. But the thing that's different from the past self is the future self is ever changing, right? We create it with our minds and with our circumstance. When you look back, that's not going to change. But when you look forward, that can change. That image can
Even you
change.
saying that now, I have to open up some space there, because what you were saying with Professor Marco about history before, and you know, the more I find out about my history, like I remember when we went to Russia, right? I thought it was a prank because the first day we got there, it looked like Gun Hill Road in the Bronx. You said you had family.
Yeah, my mom was born in the Bronx.
So Gun Hill is like a big, and it looked exactly like that. We were in Moscow the first night. And I was like, did they just drop us in the Bronx? And then I come to find out, the projects came from it. So something I was saying, this is like a black New York projects, this is part of the identity. I was like, it's not even from New York, and it's not a black thing.
I have to make this point real quick.
So just to say that my notion of the past actually changed, right?
So yes, listen though. This is what makes it MC. When God said, in any theology, says, when you can turn a mosquito into an elephant, then you are speaking the language of God. Similitudes, right, is what makes you an MC. The fact that you can take a place in Russia and turn it into a project in the Bronx, you can take a project in the Bronx and turn it into a place. You can make similitudes out of things people can't see that are similar. So an MC does that. We take this thing, and before your eyes, we turn it into this thing. Right? And people, the how you did that is MC.
So you're carrying yourself, but you're also carrying the crowd.
Right. It's like, imagine, an MC is like a person who comes on the stage and opens up a case and says, you see this? Like, if you're looking at similitudes, you're always observing, Samir, I see you got the same shoes as me. always looking for how one thing is related to another.
And that's not necessarily something that comes with a microphone or with some
That
speakers
comes with
or with
MC.
the turntable.
A lot of times, my favorite shows and my favorite artists, my favorite songs are people who are saying the same way I'm feeling, but in a way that I never thought about saying it. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times I'm like, yo, you heard this new joint? I'm in the car and I'm rapping every single time. I'm like, do you understand what he's saying? Like, I feel like this. But the way he penned it,
Right.
that is MCing.
Yeah.
The way you putting that, bringing that to here, like,
Wu-Tang,
Moscow, like, what the heck?
Wu-Tang turning themselves into Japanese martial artists before our very eyes. Like, they turned themselves,
Bro,
and we
They
believe we
changed
started
the
watching.
island.
But
Bro,
listen, they
people
changed
from
it.
Staten Island who didn't listen to hip hop started
But
when they were
everybody
cab driver.
Everybody went berserk
This
for
is
Wu-Tang because
facts.
they literally were hood dudes from Staten Island, and they turned themselves into martial arts heroes with words.
And I remember, you know, in the 5 boroughs of New York, it was like shout out to Brooklyn, Queens,
Right?
Harlem, you know what I mean? Shout out to nobody was even saying
No, but they didn't say-
there's no boroughs that
They never said
after
shout out,
that, people wanted to be from Staten
but they
Island.
never said shout out to Tokyo. Did they ever say that? Shout out to Tokyo, because the way they talk, you would think they grew up in Tokyo.
Right.
You would think they grew up like flying through the
was
air,
like-
like fighting martial arts
Right.
battles.
Right.
But what they did was create a similitude between being on the streets and
Yes.
interacting and these martial arts movies they were watching. Right? They created a parallel, and they created a world for all of us to exist inside of. That's what MCs do.
So all of us exist, just like we would want our children or our students to come from talking to us or being around us and feel like that's not the math teacher's subject or the English teacher's subject. This is your subject. You're able to own this, right? You can be a dark-skinned person from New York City on an island that no one shouts out, and you could be the person people come to learn about kung fu or
You
martial
could.
arts.
Teach your students, what we teach our students, our writing students, is the power of metaphor as being the strongest component of language, because you can make something into anything else,
Okay.
right? I play this game with Samir in the car. People will probably think this is very strange. I say, okay, rug. What are the characteristics of a rug? It lays flat. Let's describe ourselves as rugs, right? Tree. What is it? What are the
You look
characteristics?
serious right now.
I'm
Yeah, I
not-
know this is like a
This
serious.
is something
We
we
just
do.
came from Connecticut.
So
I
Samir
just came from Michigan. So we're in the car for 10 hours.
10 hours
doing
doing
that.
this,
Okay.
right? Samir, to sharpen our minds.
Wow.
So the other day, Samir's talking about, I said, okay, we had 2 words, and we had to create a metaphor out of these 2 words. So the word was road and tree. So I said, Samir, what are the characteristics of a tree? He said it grows from the ground. Any characteristic works when you're very good, and if you play this game, you get very good.
Okay.
What are the characteristics of a tree? He said it grows, it has leaves, it has bark, right? And I thought to myself, people carve their names into it, right? So he said it has bark. And then he thought of road. Instantly he transformed himself into a car where he took my idea of scratching the name into it, his idea of bark, put wood grain panels in the car, and he was carving a heart into it with our initials. Into the wood grain, and he said, I carved our name into the wood grain like I carved it into the maple tree when I promised you I'd ride with you forever.
That's from two.
He said, I'm carving a heart into the wood grain and scratching our names,
Bro,
like
we
I did
take-
under the maple tree when I
take it.
promised I would ride with you forever.
Taking road trips, bro.
That's what
how we
it's a game for us. Like, we love the game.
But that's
Because
a bar that
it's
right
a-
now you still remember.
I
It's not
remember it.
like you were playing the game and you said something good. Like,
I
you
remember it
I
because
remember that.
we're
I
trying-
might say that to my lady.
We're trying to
Like,
create
I was
visuals.
just thinking, you
But
know.
think of it, because he
That's
does
fire.
metaphor, and I'm all about emotional impact. So when you imagine a dude who came up with a girl from nothing and he scratched her name into a maple tree, and now they're driving a Bugatti and he has all wood grain, and that's something that's very valuable. And he takes out a knife and scratches their name into the wood grain. Like me and you, forever, rich or poor. You get all these visuals from that one lyric. From me, I scratched their name into the wood grain. A plus A, like I scratch
Okay,
this
so
to make
I'm
it.
gonna skip, there's two last questions, because y'all more than.
I'm sorry we're taking
y'all-
so much of y'all's time. This
No,
is
y'all
what
did
happens.
more than like, this is a master class that, they're not gonna get from someone talking about rappers. You put a rhyme together with a syllable and
And it just shows there's different opinions about and perspectives in
Living
hip-hop community
hip-hop.
that this is how we like to interact with each other because we are growing.
That's what I'm gonna come back to.
Right.
Because that's what, you actually got into the last two questions, of course, because y'all already carrying yourselves to where we need to be. But I'm gonna skip to what I was gonna do last and then we'll come back. There's an assignment we give to the students on each module, okay? And you started basically talking about something that would be simple enough for them to have time to do it and not have an excuse if they can't, but deep enough where it could be the most loving, bonding thing ever. Like, we might have people getting together and have this course that they do. So can you both break this into a 3-step assignment
Yeah.
of metaphors, and it doesn't have to be for them to rap. It could be to find similarities in something. But what would be the 3 steps to find something, do something, do something
Well,
to grow?
it's not even about rapping, it's about creativity. Because they have us come into huge corporate businesses and teach this.
Okay.
Because it is a funnel. Like, all these ideas start to expand. Like, it is a divergent
Yes.
thinking exercise, not
Yes.
like a convergent thinking where
Instead of closing
it's
it
open,
and
right?
and
So
you use that for everything.
exactly. So they
So
have
what would
us.
be the first
So
step?
the first step would be to select 2 words at random, or you could even assign the words,
Okay.
right?
I could give them a list, right?
Give
They
them-
could choose.
Right, or
Yeah.
you just give them cards, 2 separate cards.
Okay.
So say that the word is book and the other word is chair.
So
immediately-
these need to be nouns?
Now,
Does it
now
matter?
does he, no, because there's verbal metaphors and then there's different kinds of metaphors. So
Okay.
I don't want to get too deep. Just give them nouns for now,
Okay.
right? Because you have metaphors where you can do noun and noun. You have metaphors where you can do noun and adjective, where you can say like the burning desire is an adjective
So
and a
nouns are
noun.
like the basic. for
Noun is
something like-
is one kind of metaphor.
Okay,
So
so
you can
let's
do-
just say that's the first step. You get 2 nouns.
Yeah, 2 nouns. So and give them a card on each. Flip the card over. Write characteristics of those nouns.
Okay.
Nothing is too ridiculous or stupid or simple. You take everything.
Don't overthink.
Do not, in this step, in divergent thinking, you cannot eliminate anything.
Yeah,
You have
If
to,
it comes
if
to your
it comes,
mind,
you
don't-
have to write it
Don't
down.
overthink it, but don't edit yourself.
No
to the
edit.
journey
Don't
either.
crumble it,
Just,
don't
just,
So,
erase
so let's
It's
just
just
give
a
an
list.
example for your students, okay? I say the word window.
Okay.
What are the characteristics of a window?
Light, glass, reflect.
You can, what does it do?
anything,
It
anything,
opens.
yeah, open.
All of that, you write
See,
everything down. None of it is too
For a
simple.
certain amount of time or a certain amount of words.
I think a certain amount of time.
This
probably.
time. Like
Set a
I'll give
time.
you, I'll give you 1 minute.
Okay.
And you write down every,
60
because
seconds.
if the shorter the time, the quicker people are gonna, and I want you to have at least 10 things
So
in
we
1
got
minute.
2 words. We just gonna start with nouns for now.
On index cards,
And
flip them
you
over.
gotta commit right before you go to step 2. Anything I think in the next 60 seconds,
Anything.
I write.
And make them agree. In our class, we
Yeah.
say, I agree to that every thought that comes to my mind during the creative
That's
process is a
powerful.
valid thought. Right? We make
That's
them
kind of
agree.
like that confidence.
Any thought that comes to my mind during the creative process is a welcome and valid thought, right? So they agree to that. So then they write down everything.
Okay.
So you say, what else has the characteristics? What else has glass and reflects? Right?
So this is a 3rd step.
This is so first you have the words. Second step, you list
Second
the
step, they just throw
characteristics.
on whatever comes to mind.
Third step
Third, they're looking at the word associations they found and branching from
is
notes.
yes.
Okay.
So then you say, we did window.
So what else?
You wrote down it's light. What did you say?
Rectangle.
It's a rectangle. So now I want you to think of what else is a rectangle.
Okay.
What else? Anything.
Table.
A picture
Table,
frame?
window, floor.
Okay, table, okay? So now I want you to imagine if the table was a window, how does that work?
Mm.
And I want you to imagine if the window was a table, how does that work? Right? And so you have to see, look, you start thinking, and at first it's challenging.
It would be a glass table, and a boarded door.
Okay? See?
A boarded window.
And so you just let all of that go. You welcome everything.
Okay.
And then you say, okay, here's the characteristics of window, and say the other word was shoe. What are the characteristics of shoe? You wear it, you this. But then you start saying, A shoe is a window to understanding somebody's sense of style.
Okay.
You look at the shoes and you
So
can see
if,
something.
say you have a tree, and the tree has two roots, and then they come out and they have these branches of characteristics.
Yeah.
And that's like the second step. We have this rooted tree with branches, right?
Right.
Then the third step is to say, how is this fruit actually
Related
this
to this.
fruit?
Yeah. So you might have
Is
windows.
it related, or is it we're saying this is actually this fruit?
Right. And so
That's a big distinction. I'm
It
asking
is.
you, I don't know.
So here's the thing.
Does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's a game.
So it's either how are they similar
What's
fruit,
gonna happen is
or how is it actually the same fruit?
or
in
you might
disguise?
do this. In creativity, you have to give yourself room. So you can
Okay.
start with 2 words and then just focus on only one.
Okay.
Right? And say, let me
Gotcha.
find the things that have these characteristics. You're just, when you say 2 words, you're just giving them as much opportunity for creativity as possible. Right? So if I say, okay, a window, what are the characteristics of a window? Okay, it opens, it helps you stay safe.
Yeah.
Right? Then I go, okay, what else helps you stay safe? Gun,
Yeah.
security system.
My parents.
Yeah, my parents. Right? And then now it's like,
My coach.
my parents helped me stay safe.
Right.
So like, looking at
My
my
parents
parents,
are
I can
done.
look through my parents and see that I have a safe future. Like you would look through a window, right? My parents are the window to a future where I know I'm safe and secure. And then your parents are standing there made of glass, and the future you is there, and your parents open, and you walk through like a window, right? And so it's
And
like,
then my mom shot me a look like a gun. That
right,
kept me safe from.
exactly. So my parents were windows, and so if you say my parents were windows to a safe and secure future for me, but then failure was a bullet that hit them both or broke the glass. Right? And now my parents are not that window for me anymore because they lost their faith.
Bars.
It's a game. You just gotta play the game. Just let
Isn't
it
it
all
funny
go.
how this came up with Harry Allen yesterday, right? He gave an assignment about comparing things,
Two things.
right?
Similar to the
We're gonna
language.
come back to the, I think we might just need to give you a copy of the bigger interview.
I think you
with
should
a
have
lot of
us
these-
come and help teach something.
Yeah,
I think that's what you should
yeah.
do.
It's an online class, but y'all welcome to
If we
like,
could do like
Like, yes,
fundamentals of
you
you know what,
metaphor.
would you?
Yeah.
Because I think the last day of the class, I'd like to have a cipher with all the guests.
Yeah,
I'm always
fundamentals.
trying to do that.
Or fundamentals of metaphor. And we'll
But-
just play the game.
So going back to what you touched on, which I wanted to end with, is that hip hop is a response. You know, we talked with Professor Mark a little bit about this, but we're pointing out that hip hop really didn't come after the civil rights movement, and after a response after the civil rights movement was we've been protesting, we've been creating food for children and doing all these positive, helpful things, and some of the children of that generation are like, I don't like doing this. Y'all still beating our parents in the head. Y'all still shooting us.
Yeah.
So the gangs kind of emerged out of that, along with a number of other things like taking funds out of education and arts and stuff like that. But then hip hop kind of comes in that same space and it says, how can we, we don't want to be politically correct.
Right.
We don't want to, I just need education and vote. And it's like, nah, because no matter what, we got problems. But hip hop kind of said, how can we express this aggression? But I notice every time we express this aggression, we're not destroying the oppressor, we still kill ourselves. And hip hop goes, how can we express this aggression with ourselves in a way where we're alive and we're challenging and developing and sustaining some of these words you were saying before. We're for your future, your sustainability. That being said, it was cool even to see y'all talking, like the battle for communication and the battle to listen to each other and be one voice and two different voices as well. It's with parents and children, it's with couples and partners. How does what we do in hip hop culture when there's a battle or a cipher? Because the battle is like I'm against you, and the cipher is like I'm with you. But either way, there's an exchange of taking turns, right? How does that relate to how y'all have this beautiful family decisions about traveling, doing activities in the car, where some people caught up in rush hour traffic and you come up with this metaphor about your life together?
I mean,
How does that relate to hip-hop competitiveness cipher to how you talk to each other as a couple?
I think it has to do with growth. There's a couple points that I'm gonna go to the last point and then go back. But I think it all has to do with knowing everybody plays their position. If we're both trying to, we're both gonna drive out of control, we're gonna make the destination. No, we're both gonna be tired at the same time. It's not gonna make makes sense. So if I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know what? Take a nap right now. I got this. When you wake up, we'll play this game, blah, 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 and then we keep going over it. We can sit here and engage until one of us gets tired, then we do this. Like, you play your position and you may do this, I'll do that, that's the way we're gonna win. Right?
Right.
Like, we talk about this a lot. At first in hip hop, it was battle, then you realize you're destroying each other's careers when you battle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's collaborate more and all grow.
Right.
All the boroughs.
I'm still looking for a collab with the Reminders, but
Listen, it's nothing, let's get
So
it.
You
for
heard that,
us,
right?
it's like, for us, we're superheroes with complementary powers. There's no sidekicks, right? So it's like, he got fire, I got ice. Like whoever is the most applicable person in this situation to be successful and strive for our victory, that's the person who's gonna have primary responsibility. So when it comes to, if we were doing this interview about hip hop history, I would barely say anything. Because that's his, like he is the hip hop historian.
Yeah.
Like anything you want to talk about hip hop history is there. If you want to talk about the components of language, he's gonna chill and let me go. Because that's what the academic part of language, that's what I study on a regular basis. I study that. The philosophy of creativity, that's what I study. Literally, like, study it at the library on my own, no college degree, just because I'm in pursuit of the best way to be able to express myself.
So let me put that into one part before we continue. So one part is just how you frame the interaction.
We assess the situation. We don't need, it's nonverbal communication. You ask the question, we already know who is the expert in that area because we've been married for 50 years.
There's no beef.
No question.
To start with.
No.
It's already, I'm gonna pass you this, I'm gonna pass you this. And
It's
I
like this.
enjoy it. This reminds me of Ilyasa Shabazz, Malcolm X. I met her recently. And one of the students said at the end, you know, what was it like? And I think it was coming out of a certain branch of feminism. But one of the students said, what was it like being in Malcolm X's shadow? Like, how challenging was that? And she said, which I feel is a very much of the culture that we're talking about, she said, you know, me and my sister never felt like we were in the shadow. We always felt like we were under a bright light.
Right.
So how you even frame what's happened is powerful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even, I mean, obviously these are things that you have to live with us or be around us enough to understand or see, but the way our children would engage with us, he knows when he should come to me about something, just like he knows when he should go to his mom about something.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, why? Because I engage this way with this person and that way. Like, I know, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
And if we have to check each other, it's because you deserve it.
yeah, absolutely.
It's like, I'm checking you because you need to be checked.
Yeah.
Because we can only
That's
check
the
each
last
other.
part.
We can
Yes.
only check each other.
Yes.
So like if he'll notice, like say something's happening, he'll be like, you know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, like he's saying basically like you are not in control of yourself the way that I know you would like to be. So I'm gonna check.
Well, yeah, you may be in a situation where you don't see you don't see the bigger picture. You know what I mean? And you're put in, and everybody else is looking at you a certain way, and you're being taken advantage of, or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean?
And one thing he always tells me is he's a person that's very observant, and I'm a person that's very interactive. Both strengths, both weaknesses, right? And so he'll tell me like, because you're so busy doing, you're not seeing. And I'll say, because you're so busy seeing, you're not doing.
Right. So
Right,
you
and
gotta
so
balance it out. That's what
balance.
you bring those forces together, and you got a bigger force.
Right, it's like we make up like one hand and one hand, right?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So it's like how I got my DJ and I'm gonna let him do the DJ, and I got my big girl, she's gonna do that, and I'm gonna do the rapping, and we can each do our own part stronger because we know you're doing your thing. You shine. It's like a constellation. You shine and doesn't dim my light. It makes us brighter.
He's like the dude, he's like, if you picture like when we were first coming into hip, like when I was first getting on stages and rhyming, like you said, and I think that's why I said it, because when I got on the stage, I was not ready to be on the stage, and I was not confident.
Okay.
I had such bad stage fright, I couldn't even move.
Yeah.
And he was like,
Because you like now you got that. You probably have that same nervous energy.
but I never do now, because he
But
forced me.
it's excitement.
He forced
It's
me
not-
every time, and he was like, whatever happens, happens, and you're gonna get up and you're gonna do it again. Right now, I was like, when I would be like, I messed up, I would be ready, like, I can't. He's like, you are so afraid of ruining people's image of you that you're not willing to construct an image for yourself.
Okay.
Right? You're so busy worried about the broken pieces that
And that's a framework again, because you still had that energy. You probably had more energy than all of us.
No, he
back
was the
then.
only one who knew. He was the
He
only
framed it.
because of the conversations we had. So I'm a nerd. Like I'm 100% like super like nerdy person.
Right.
He's the street dude that was like, hey, everybody listen for a second.
Right.
Okay, go ahead. Say your little nerdy stuff.
Right.
Let everybody listen. This is my girl, y'all gonna listen to her. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, hello. That's what he did.
Right.
So he commands attention and I keep it.
Right.
Right? And then he tells you
I created
why
the
you
platform.
had to pay attention
I
in the
created the
first
platform and I'm like, okay, now you get on it.
Right, he opens and then he performs and he closes, right? And so
Right.
now in turn, I open and I
But
perform and I close.
let me just stop for a second before we miss over this point. He didn't tell you not to have that energy. That's what I love about y'all working as a team.
No, and
Because
I'm
that
in
same
control.
energy that made you nervous is the same energy that once you have a partner that's framing it correct is the energy, yeah, I'm alive.
Yeah, he
Because
said
if it squashed the energy, it would have just been like, I'm kind of excited.
he
now.
does not cater
Right?
to my weaknesses at all.
You framed what the energy was. It wasn't don't have emotion, it was don't feel bad about the
Yeah,
emotion.
he said, you're scared, you're supposed to be scared. This could go horribly wrong.
Okay, so that's
And I was like, well, you making it worse. He's like, you're not gonna die. If you feel afraid, why don't you think about it like that's like this is what you're
because it's
supposed to do.
important.
You're afraid
You're
because
afraid.
this is a contrast between your past and your future. Right? That's why you're afraid. Right? And so he made it like you're going to be afraid until one day you're not. I'm not gonna tell you you're not gonna be. I'm not gonna tell you it's not scary.
So coming back to the checking point, because you explained really well the complementary
Baby's
and
okay,
teamwork
yeah.
aspect, right? The checking part of it, right? In hip hop, we kind of come up with a way to check people, not because we're destroying them, but because we care about them and they need to be checked.
Yeah.
I've seen certain teachers in schools where they don't check the kids because they don't feel like these are their kids, right? So it's almost like you could say they're not checking them, they're nice teachers. And a lot of kids will say, that's a nice teacher, I never get in trouble in his class, right? But actually, you see the teachers that check the kids love these kids, and that's why they're checking them. They expect something better for them. You started to talk about it a little bit. Could you talk a little bit about that in your relationship? You're checking someone because if you didn't check them, it would kind of mean like
You don't care.
really
Yeah, you don't care about what position they're in. You know what I mean? Like, to me, as we grow, our relationship or my relationship with my friends, we're at an age in our life where you recognize your friends are the people who are going to tell you the truth. Your friends are the ones that's going to hold you accountable to be better, to do better, to be where you're supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how I choose my friendships now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, to where before it's like, yo,
Yes.
this cat's cool, I like that cat,
Yes.
whatever. Like, everybody comes in, it gets to a
You
point where
never
smoke
have a
clears.
problem? Like,
Yeah. Like, smoke clears, like, no, like, I had this conversation with dude and I was upset, you know what I mean? And that's sometimes gonna get ugly. You know what I mean? That's the part, that's what makes it strong, that's what makes it rich.
So that's what we're saying to some of the rappers that we want to develop in the MC.
Yeah, and
We
even
love y'all enough.
the second point I was talking about earlier
Yeah.
is when you were saying, we come from protesting and activists and this and that, and
Can they start to come over?
The babies are like, hold on. Come here.
We need to go be here all day.
Yeah, because the baby's like, can we go eat?
Come
Yeah,
on,
Johnny,
y'all.
look.
We wrapping up, so y'all want to
Yeah.
stay here?
So it's like, what did you have, man? What did you have?
No, he's all right. He's all right.
It's
Look,
like,
come here. His hair is a mess. It's
it's
reality.
There are, and as a matter of fact, this is a good point, is there are people who you look at their parents and you look at the generation that they come from, and they're not carrying that torch. You're like, yo, well, how come you're not carrying that torch? You come from a long line of activists. Yeah, but at the same time, they might not have been exposed to that. I know a million MCs or a million artists, their children listen to something completely different, and that's fine. They've learned, they could probably tell you themselves, they learned so much from just the panel we were at. From listening to us in a certain context. From listening to our friends that they see all the time and dance with them, they've never heard them talk like that.
Wow.
So it's about exposing your family and your loved ones to what you're doing, right? And they can carry that torch on themselves. from gravitating towards it just from that. You know what I mean? Because I've seen a lot of people lost to the streets because, yeah, your dad might have been this incredible man, but not for his family because he was always gone. So you teaching the world, but you're not teaching at home. That's where the foundation starts.
Master of ceremony.
See what I'm saying?
Boom, 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 boom.
Reminders, thank you. We got Asian Black, Asian Black. So we got two different names. We got Big Samir.
Yeah.
And we got
The
The
legendary.
baby.
Yo, they told me
Is the baby
on the panel, I was like, yo, I'm Samir, I'm one half the reminders, and afterwards they're like, no, you're 1/5. You're 1/5 of the reminders. I
We're
was like,
nothing,
all
like,
right,
we're
got
not,
it.
we're
So
all
I'm
the
saying,
reminders apparently.
they're a part of it. They're a part of it. Like, when we go on the road, they're a part of the
And they're not babies, we always just call them the babies.
Right.
It's like a thing, like I'll ask people, like, how are the babies? And it's like in our culture, we know that means how are the children,
right.
right? But some people like, I don't have babies.
Well, you
I
know
don't
what it
think
is
they're-
too,
you know what I mean?
because we're used to being, we're family.
But a lot of people call y'all babies.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what I'm
Y'all
saying.
still
Is,
get
I know. Heard that one time was like he was talking about us.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, I was asking. I was like, so what are the kids gonna do? He was talking about us
We're
the
the
whole
kids.
time. We're still the kids.
Yeah, they
So
call
it's
us
like,
the
so when we
kids.
say the kids, it's like they don't picture them. So we're gonna say
Say the
that's the
babies.
babies.
We're
We're
the
the
kids.
kids. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a long line, man. It's levels to this.
Well, I've seen y'all and, you know, I remember one of the first videos of Reminders and you was in like the stroller.
Yeah.
You know?
We're in Trinity,
So
we
you-
came
yeah.
to Trinity and filmed
You
the
helped
video,
your
we
parents
was brand
launch.
new.
Yeah.
You helped your parents launch into
What
their
video
video
do we
started.
have?
The way it is. It's not the way it is. Yeah.
And Malcolm is a baby, like in
Yeah.
the baby sleep. It was on the steps at Harvard. You
Yeah.
gotta watch it.
Yeah.
What's up, server? You gotta come in here.
He said
You
he
can't
told
have
me
the
he's
king.
grandfather. He
Come
said
on,
he's
king.
playing the grandfather.
You can't have the king stroll in.
Yeah, nah, we doing that interview with Slurry as well.
Look
Yeah,
at
man,
him.
so
Right?
we'll be back for the wrap up.
We got more than enough, but I think when it's ready and edited, I'll give you the extra stuff, just extra stuff.
I am Minister Server. You call me Uncle Server. Alright.
Oh man, that was the best, man.
What's your name?
In the zone,
Oh, let's take a photo in front of the
Yeah.
Trinity thing.
Isn't it?
Yo, Samir, let's take one up.
Yeah.
Yo, pup, you got
Look out so we can take the picture. Get your stuff. 'Cause we're
Grab
about
my
to
guys that comes in the picture. The Ashland Central Hip Hop.
Come in, come in.